Welcome back, my true crime junkies. We are back with our second part of our Christmas edition story of Dark Christmas. So don't forget to subscribe on any of your favorite platforms to continue supporting my podcast. And you can also follow us on Instagram on True Crime Junkies for more upcoming episodes. And now let's continue with our story. The text message kept playing in my head that it really meant that I should leave, and why. Because Susie and Steven couldn't come, the weather, illness, it's all a guessing game. The fact is, I have to go. The house seemed subdued when I returned. I had left the lights on and I went straight upstairs to pack my bag. At once I saw the light to the attic was on. I paused, breathed. Of course it's on. I never switched it off. That proves it's a wiring fault. I must tell the housekeeper. My bags were packed. I threw the food into a box and put everything back in a car. I had the whiskey in front, a blanket I stole from the bed, and I made a hot water bottle just in case. It was only 5 o'clock. At worst, I'd be in Inchbarn by 9 p.m. I got in the car and turned the key. The radio came on for a second and died. And as the ignition clicked and clicked, I knew that the battery was flat. 2 hours ago at the station, the car had started the first time. And even if I had left the lights on, but I didn't leave the lights on. A cold panic hit me. I took a swig of the whiskey. I couldn't sleep in the car all night. I will die. I don't want to die. Back in the house, I wondered what was going on. What was I going to do all night? I must not fall asleep. I had noticed some old books and volumes when I had explored downstairs yesterday. Assorted dusty adventure stories and tales of empire. As I sorted through them, I came across a faded velvet photograph album. In the cold and deserted sitting room, I began to discover the past. High Fallen House 1910, the woman in long skirts and miraculous waist, the man in shooting tweeds, the stable boy in waistcoats, the gardening boys wearing flat caps, the maids in starched aprons, and here they are again in their Sunday best. A wedding photograph of Joseph and Mary Locke, 1912. He was the gardener, she was a maid. In the back of the album, loose and unsorted, were photographs and newspaper cuttings. 1914, the man in the uniform. There was Joseph. I took the album back into the kitchen and put it next to my wooden soldier I had on my coat and scarf. I propped myself up into 2 chairs by the wood fire range and dozed and waited and dozed. It was perhaps 2 o'clock when I heard a child crying. Not a child who has scraped his knees or lost a toy, but an abandoned child. A child whose own voice, his last hold on to life. A child who cries and knows that no one will come. The sun was not above me. It was above me. I knew where it was coming from. I put my hands over my ears and my head between my knees. I could not shut up the sound. I couldn't shut it out. A locked up child, a hungry child, a child who was cold and wet and frightening. Twice I got up and went to the door. Twice I sat down again. The crying stopped. Silence. A dreadful silence. I raised my head. Footsteps are coming down the stairs. Not one foot in one front of the other, but one foot dragging slightly. Then the other joining and stepping again. At the bottom of the stairs, the footsteps stopped, paused. Then they did what I knew they would do with all the terror in my body. The footsteps came towards the kitchen door. Whatever was out there was standing 12 feet away on the other side of the door. I stood behind the table and picked up a knife. The door swung open with violent force that rammed the brass doorknob into the plaster of the wall. Wind and snow blew into the kitchen, whirling up the photographs and cutting on the table. I saw that the front door itself was wide open, the entrance hall like a wind tunnel. Holding the knife, I went forward into the hall to shut the door. The pendant metal lantern that hung from the ceiling was swinging wildly on its long chain. A sudden gust lurched it forward like a child's swing, pushed too hard. I fell back at force against the large semicircle fan light over the front door. The fan light shattered and fell around my shoulders in sharp shards of sharp rain. Flicker, buzz, darkness. The house lights were out. No wind now, no cries, silence again. Glass hid in the snow-lit hall. I walked out of the front door and into the night. At the drive, I turned left and I saw them. The mother and child. The child was wearing the woolen dress. She had no shoes. She held up her arms to her mother, who stood like a stone. I ran forward and I grabbed the child in my arms. There was no child. I had fallen face down in the snow. Help me. That's not my voice. I'm on my feet again. The mother is ahead of me. I followed her. She's going towards the walled garden. She seems to pass through the door, leaving me on the other side. Do not enter. I tried the rusty hoop handle. It broke off, taking a piece of the door with it. I kicked the door open. It fell off its hinges. The ruined and abandoned garden lay before me. A walled garden of 1 acre used to feed 20 people, but that was a long time ago. There were footprints in the snow. I followed them. They led me to the bothy, its roof patch with rusted iron. There was no door, but inside seemed dry and sound. There was a tear-off calendar still on the wall. December 22nd of 1916. I put my hand in my pocket and I realized that the key from the nativity was there. At the same time, I heard a chair scrape on the floor in the room beyond. I had no fear anymore. As the body first shivers, then numbs with cold, my feelings were frozen. I was moving through shadows as one who dreams. In the room beyond, there was a low fire lit in the tiny fireplace. On either side of the fire sat the mother and the child. The child was absorbed playing with a marble. Her bare feet were blue, but she did not seem to feel the cold any more than I did. Are we dead then? The woman with a shawl over her head looked at me with deep, expressionless eyes. I recognized her. It was Mary Locke. She nodded at me, or at not me, at some other me in some other time. I do not know. Her gaze went to a tall cupboard. I knew that my key fitted this cupboard and that I must open it. I did so. A dusty uniform fell out, crumpling like a puppet. The uniform was not quite empty of its occupant. The back of the faded wool jacket had long slash where the lungs would have been. I looked at the knife in my hand, opened the door. Are you in there? Open the door. I woke to blinding white. Where am I? Something rocking. It's the car. I'm in my car. A heavy glove was brushing off the snow. I sat up, found my keys, and I pressed the unlock button. It was morning. Outside was the guard from the train and a woman who announced herself as Miss Wormwood. Fine mess you've made here, she said. We went into the kitchen. I was shivering so much that Miss Wormwood relented and began to make coffee. Alfie, fetch me, she said, after he spoke to your friends. "There's a body," I said, "in the walled garden." "Is that where it is?" said Miss Wormwood. At Christmas 1914, Joseph Locke had gone to war before he left Flanders. He had made a nativity scene for his little girl. When he came back in 1916, he had been gassed. They heard him climbing the stairs, gasping for breath through fourth erupted lungs. His mind had gone, they said. At night in the attic where he slept with his wife and child, he leaned vacantly against the wall, rolling the child's marbles up and down and up, pacing, and pacing. One night, just before Christmas, he strangled his wife and daughter. He left them for dead in the bed and went out. But his wife was not dead. She followed him. In the morning, they found her sitting by the nativity, her dress dark with blood, his finger marks livid at her throat. She was singing a lullaby and pushing the point of the knife into the back of the wooden figure. Joseph was never found. "Are you going to call the police?" I said. "What for?" said Miss Wormwood. "Let the dead bury the dead." Alfie the guard went out to see to my car. It started the first time. The exhaust blew in the white air. I left him clearing up and was about to set off when I remembered I had left my radio in the kitchen. I went back inside and the kitchen was empty. I could hear the two of them up in the attic. I picked up the radio. The nativity was on the table as I had left it. But it wasn't as I had left it. Joseph was there, and the animals, and the shepherd, and the worn-out star. And in the center was the crib. Next to the crib were the wooden figures of the mother and child. Wow. Now, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I hope you enjoy your day with your family and loved ones. And I will be back next week with a new True Crime Junkies regular episode. So just make sure not to forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode coming up. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. Bye.